Hello, hello, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Berlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. And Horwat, what did I tell you yesterday when we were prepping for this show? I looked at the calendar. We're about 3 weeks away from the opening of training camp. We're almost to the end of the NHL offseason. I'm very excited about this. I did not realize how close we were to the beginning of training camp. And it's the same thing as football training camp. You get to the first day of training camp, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, excited, ready for preseason hockey. And then after the first preseason game, you're like, okay, I'm ready for the real thing to start. But nonetheless, we're in that stage of getting ready for preseason hockey. How excited are you that we're about to see at least Penguins players start to ascend back to the city of Pittsburgh?
We're at least about to see Penguins events and Penguin things happening on the same calendar page, because I just finally wrote in all the days that I had my season tickets for with the half plan. So I got those dates circled on my calendar. It's going to be nice to see the month of September roll around. The chill is going to hit the air. Football season's starting. Whenever say the chill is in the air, it's going to be 90 degrees today. So,
Yeah, the chill's not in DC. I can tell you that much.
No, it was hot yesterday. But yeah, the chill will be eventually rolling around and things will feel like hockey season yet again. It's going to be nice. It's going to be a fun year. It's going to be an interesting year. I think we're all expecting, we all have high expectations, but from what was supposed to be, and it ended up being just for a very, very short period of time, the most eventful summer in recent memory for the Penguins, could lead into one of the most intriguing seasons, because for once, the expectations are higher. I think everyone counted them out for long enough that finally people realized, we can't count these guys out anymore, despite them being old. So let's exceed expectations, boys.
I think a big thing about the expectations, too, is when you go toe-to-toe with the team that went as far as the New York Rangers did without a first or second string goaltender and without your goaltender again, without your captain for a game and a half, as well as without one of your top six forwards for 6 of the games. I think people start to say, they were good enough to win that series. They just couldn't put it all together. So now people are saying, they're bringing players back. They're improving on the back end. That's the overall belief. Tristan Jarry's heading into a contract season. What does that mean? So there's a lot of storylines heading into this season. I'm excited. I know I'll be up there for the beginning of training camp. I know I'll be there on day 1 against the Arizona Coyotes. I'm very excited for that.
There you go.
A trip back up to Pittsburgh. But let's get into some Penguins talk right now and talk a little bit about what we have going on. A lot of defense talk in this episode, and we want to lead it off with Marcus Pettersson, because he's a guy that has been on the trade block for, it seems like, since he signed that contract. So at the very least, the last 2 seasons, Marcus Pettersson's name has been on the chopping block. So I want to ask you, Horwat, with the way that this summer has worked out, with what the defense looks like right now with the log jam, with what the salary cap looks like, do you think Marcus Pettersson should still be on that trade block?
That's honestly one of the hardest questions we've asked all summer, because in most situations, I think I would say yes, because it's the last year before his clause kicks in. Not that we still couldn't move him, but it's the last year before where it's still just completely open. It's a big number at 4.025 against the cap. He's young. He has a future ahead of him still, definitely as an NHL defenseman.
Yeah.
That some other team should be willing to take up. I mean, yeah, it's an expensive contract, but maybe you just play out 2.5 years of it and go from there and figure it out. Maybe to maybe a team that's low on the cap floor, whatever you need to do. The issue is, and I forget who brought it up now, but I've been falling back on it ever since I heard it, is what do you do if Brian Dumoulin gets hurt then? Because then you are down to whoever they end up putting there, because your fallback is Marcus Pettersson in that situation. And if he's not there, you got to go to your third option, which could be Jan Ruda, could be Ty Smith, could be Mark Friedman. And you have to remember, that's the guy playing with Kris Letang if Brian Dumoulin goes down. So in your mind, you probably go, well, trade Brian Dumoulin then. That's a little harder to do because he's in his last year. He's 30, and what does he have left in the tank? I think he could still turn it around. You never know. But as for right now, if Marcus Pettersson should be on or off the block, I have to go with off, just because of that injury prone just because of how injury prone Brian Dumoulin can be.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you look at Pettersson, the biggest thing you're highlighting is that left side of the defense. The one thing the Penguins did this summer, while they did change a lot of their defense core, is they shored up that right side. There's 4 NHL caliber, everyday starting players that are on the right side of the Penguins defense now. Obviously, Kris Letang is the leader, and we'll talk about Kris Letang here coming up because he was named to the NHL's top 20 defenseman list. We'll let you know where he ranked in our second segment, but we also added Jeff Petrie. I think that is an upgrade from anybody that we saw on the Pittsburgh Penguins last year behind Letang. I think they also added a really good defensive defenseman in Jan Rutta, and Chad Ruhwedel was really impressive. And we can get into this another day, but I really think that the fact that Ruhwedel's not going to find himself an everyday spot, and I really don't think he is going into this season, is kind of a shame considering how long he waited for it and how well he did last season. But that's, like I said, that's a conversation for a different day. But when looking at the left side, conversely, I mean, yeah, Brian Dumoulin is that guy. He has been that guy in the past, and you're hoping that he comes off that MCL injury and he's able to be a top pairing defenseman with Kris Letang. And then it's Pettersson, because if Dumoulin can't do that, if he can't stay healthy, I don't know if Pettersson's ready to step into that role, but he's more ready than anybody else. I mean, we mentioned that Jan Rutta played with Victor Hedman on the left side last season for Tampa Bay, but he didn't eat up the minutes that a player that like Brian Dumoulin is asked to eat up. And Pettersson's in that same boat. If he gets bumped up to that first line, he's going to have to play 25 minutes a game. And I'm not sure Pettersson's quite ready for that. Now, listen, Pettersson is much better than the public wants to say, because the issue being he played with John Marino on a pair last year, which isn't a bad thing for the Penguins because this is a good defensive pairing for them. But what do we always say? If you're a good defensive defenseman, nobody's going to talk about you. And that's the thing. Nobody talked about them in a positive light because their positive stuff isn't flashy. And that was their entire pairing the entirety of last season. But if you look at the numbers for last season, and I'll pull up a graphic here for those watching us on YouTube. It's from the Andy and Roto social media page. Marcus Pettersson was ranked in the 82nd percentile among defensemen. He had almost a career year when it came to points, 2 goals, 17 assists, 19 points. That's not what you're looking for from Marcus Pettersson. But what am I looking at on this entire thing? Defense, 98th percentile. 79th in play driving, 92nd in denials. That's huge for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then the other thing that I look at in transition is his possession exits at 64%. So those are big things that he does well, that if you think about it, nobody, like your everyday viewer of the NHL, doesn't just look at that. But if you look at this graphic, and it is backed by obviously facts and stats and everything that goes into it, and Andy and Roto do a great job with this visualization, then you look at this and say, oh, he is a top 4, like a bona fide top 4 defenseman in the National Hockey League, and he's played as such, even though his contract might be higher. He's still, especially if you look at the left side of the Penguins defense, he's one of the best options you got.
He really is. And I'm trying to remember, these numbers were pretty good compared to the league. I'm trying to remember where that like 98% sat amongst other defensemen in the league. It was pretty high.
The 98th percentile. That's where he is.
Yeah, but I meant like there was like only a few
only a few that had a higher. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was one of the best defensive defensemen in the league last year, underratedly so, though.
In terms of defensive defense, yeah, it was interesting to see that because it's not exactly the player you would expect to be on a list like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's there, I found it. But it's fun to see that his numbers did this well because it's not it's a quiet game for sure. It's not exactly what you would expect, but just pretty incredible stuff. And this is the kind of thing you would need to continue. Mm-hmm. He is the defensive defenseman that maybe could take over for Brian Dumoulin. Let's say we ship him out, or let's say Dumoulin gets hurt. We can have a little faith in Marcus Pettersson to step up into that situation. We just need to see the consistency first. I think that was one of his biggest bouts through this whole thing was he wasn't ultra consistent throughout the season. Also, it was 6th in the league. 6th behind. I mean, yeah, you have to figure the names in front of him because these are analytical numbers. Jonas Siegenthaler, Charlie McAvoy, Miro Heiskanen, Jared Spurgeon, and Adam Pelech, and then him. But still, those aren't knocks in any,
They're all guys in the same position. They're defensive defensemen that people don't really think about as good because they don't put up 60, 70 points a game, or like Roman Josi, 95 points in a season.
Yeah, and you have to figure that spot, that sixth spot, came up in front of Jacob Slavin and Devin Taves.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We're not coming out here and saying, hey, he should be praised as one of the best Penguins defensemen. No, but going into this season, maybe you shouldn't have him on the trade block. I mean, because let's look at what the Penguins are doing overall in their defense. They have 9 NHL caliber defensemen. And we talked to Nick Hart of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. He's the play-by-play announcer down there. He said, listen, P.O. Joseph has more than proved that he's ready. It's just a matter of if he's more ready than the guys ahead of him. So there are 9 quality candidates for 6 potential jobs, and the 7th, of course, being the healthy scratch. But 2 guys are going to be sent down out of these 9. So when you look at this 9, maybe somebody does get traded. If you're Ron Hextall, maybe you do trade somebody away, because I don't know if you want to carry 9 guys throughout the entirety of the season. It's not like they don't have options behind that as fill-ins, but at the same time, do you think before the season starts, and then we'll get into if another one happens during the season, do you think before the season starts, one of these 9 defensemen are off the team? I know we've asked it before, but has your opinion changed as the summer has gotten older?
It's so hard to because you have to figure things would have happened maybe by now, but also B, because there is a logjam, yeah. But you look at these names and all of a sudden you realize, oh, everyone here has a role though. Chris Letang won the number 1 defenseman. Brian Dumoulin, his running mate, despite inconsistency and injuries, can probably still cut it enough to play alongside Chris Letang. Marcus Pettersson, fall guy for an injury-prone Brian Dumoulin. Jeff Petrie, the new guy. Let's see what he can do. He's the new guy. He's the big, expensive contract we took on. He has to do something. He should be better than John Marino.
Yeah.
Jan Ruda. I like him as the Chad Ruhwedel option. But then there's Chad Ruhwedel. Oh, hey, the step-in guy. Ty Smith, the project for the future.
The wild card, honestly.
Yeah, the wild card. Mark Friedman. Oh, he's the pest. Whenever we're in a bind, throw him in. P.O. Joseph. The future is now. Everyone in the system, despite there being so many of them, has a role. It's a matter of which role are we dumping off? Because you kind of want all those roles to work out somewhere. It just sucks that they're all in defense and can only fit 6 guys. Let's say like the project piece for the future was a forward. Suddenly it's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. You could send him down and he could become Alex Nylander, or he could become Valtteri Puustinen or Sam Poulin. But the thing that I'm looking at and what I think might happen, now this is something like tinfoil hat conspiracy. This is just my prediction on what might happen. And it all depends on who performs at training camp, obviously. But I think considering what we've seen in the past, plus what this year means, I think P.O. Joseph makes the team out of camp. So when I say there's going to be 2 guys that have to get sent down, I think one of them is going to end up being Ty Smith, because he can. I mean, he's waiver exempt. And I think Mark Friedman does, but I think unfortunately Mark Friedman has proved enough over the past couple of seasons with the Penguins that he probably gets picked up on waivers, and that's what ends up happening. Obviously, you want to get something in return for him, but I think that's what, I feel like that's what's going to end up happening, because it doesn't feel like a trade is on the precipice here. Like, nobody knows because it's Ron Hextall, but I really do feel like that's what's going to end up happening, is because you're going to see the 6th, Ruhwedel being the 7th, and then it's going to be Ty Smith because he's waiver exempt, and it's going to be Mark Friedman, but I think he gets claimed on waivers.
That's possible. The waivers are weird because you see a ton of people go through waivers all the time during the season, but no one really picks anyone up, unless they're coming from Toronto. Now, I wouldn't be shocked to see Friedman get picked up. He's definitely a guy that certain teams could use.
Oh, yeah. He's a
team he's a player we could use, really. The Penguins could use him. So it's an interesting, plus he's young, he's cheap, he's got decent future. Didn't he just re-sign that contract too for 2 more years?
He did. Yeah, he just got a new contract. But at the same time, so did Ruhwedel.
Yeah.
I mean, so the only person that you really haven't seen this management group back up is Brian Dumoulin, Marcus Pettersson, and P.O. Joseph. Like, those are the 3 guys that their contracts do not touch this ownership or management group. The other 6, 7 guys, they are all signed under contracts that Ron Hextall has A-okayed.
Yeah, could be fun. Mark Friedman slipping through waivers. I could also see him making it through, though, just because the waiver wire is so weird.
Yeah, and sometimes people go on the waivers and you look at it and you say, how did nobody want that? But maybe it just doesn't fit at the certain time. Maybe they don't think they're going to mesh, especially with a guy like Friedman. Maybe people think he's not going to mesh with our locker room. I know that Friedman would be a perfect example of a Philadelphia Flyers defenseman, but I think that bridge may have been burned since he came over to Pittsburgh and the way he's played against them and the way they've conversely played against him. But like, I feel like somebody would have space for a bottom pairing defenseman like Mark Friedman. And if he's on the waivers and they need it early in the season, I feel like they would jump on that opportunity. But, you know, maybe the Penguins get lucky and that doesn't happen and he clears through to Wilkes-Barre. But I really, that's what I think is going to happen. It's just a guess. It's not backed by or substantiated by any rumors or anything. But looking into it, pending obviously the performances that P.O. Joseph would have to outplay both of them, that's what I feel like is the most likely scenario as of right now.
Another thing too is you have to think of when there's going to be that one day where it's every team is dropping people through waivers.
Yeah.
How many claims actually get made there? Because every team's dropping people. It's not like they're taking people on at the same time.
Yeah, I don't think I think with GMs on those certain days when teams are trying to get roster compliant for the beginning of the season, if they don't already have their eye on somebody that says, hey, if they drop them or if they put them on waivers, we're going to take them. They're not going to sift through the waiver wire. I mean, what else do they do all day, I guess? But yeah, I feel like you don't see it enough that if it doesn't happen that much, it's because people are like, yeah, we're waiting for a certain player to hit waivers. And if that player doesn't, then we're not doing anything.
Yeah. So maybe, Mark Friedman can just like fly through the weeds with all of the other players that are going to hit waivers at the same time. You never know, because like I said, if every other team is dropping a player, well, they're dropping them. They're not going to take another guy on just to drop another one or vice versa, or like try and just do more maneuvering. They're just trying to get their players down and move on. Plus, there are certain days, it seems, where general managers understand, hey, let's not do a move today because it's waiver day, whatever.
Yeah.
And they just send everyone down. I don't know. There's got to be that big 32-man group chat. Sorry, 31. Lou Lamoriello doesn't have a smart enough phone.
Lou Lamoriello does not want to be in a group chat with the rest of the league. I can promise you that.
Exactly. So there's a 31 GM group chat out there that says, hey, guys, don't touch anyone today. It's waiver day. It's sending everyone through.
Probably. I mean,
except for obvious exceptions. Like you said, if another GM has an eye on someone specific, that might hit the wire.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of like the thing we need like the Pat McAfee of the NHL, which is, I guess, spit and chicklets to go out and actually start interviewing GMs. But we know NHL GMs don't often do stuff like that. Billy Guerin needs to spill the beans. He's the one that's the most active. But no, when looking at this defense, and that's where I think it's going to be. And this might be completely off. And my opinion might change in 3 weeks when I go to training camp and see what it actually looks like when all 9 of these guys are on the ice together for the first time. But I really think it's going to end up being Dumoulin, Letang, Pettersson, Petrie, Joseph, and Ruda. I think that's what ends up being the top 6, with Ruedel being that 7th defenseman. And I do want to highlight one last thing before we move on and we can talk about it a little bit. Jesse Marshall is a big friend of the show, obviously covers the Penguins for The Athletic. He posted on Twitter about a week ago, said, take Marcus Pettersson and Jeff Petrie are going to be very good together. Assuming the former isn't the one moved in the defensive logjam, which we just talked about, I just see that the utopian, quote, puck-moving guy and stringently defensive guy pairing should be a good for Malkin too, less breakout solo work. I completely agree. I think that he highlighted exactly why we've talked on this podcast already for the first 20 minutes that Marcus Pettersson should probably be taken off the trade block. And he might be, but in the public's eyes, he should be taken off the trade block.
Probably. Absolutely.
So I like that. I think that could be a very good pairing.
It could be a ton of fun.
And a pairing, like we said, that there's going to be more flashy stuff from Petrie. So maybe Pettersson gets looked at in a better light for his defensive play because he's not playing in a shutdown defensive pairing that doesn't produce that much.
Yeah, and you have to remember this. We just talked about him all of last week, 2 weeks ago. The amount of difference that Todd Reirden brings to the team as the defensive coach.
That's also true. So let's switch over and talk about Todd Reirden's favorite defenseman. That's Kris Letang. We'll do that right after this break. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. We had something lined up here, but I guess we should realize that every Sunday night at like 10 o'clock p.m., NHL Network decides to drop their next version of a top 20 list. So this is what we're going to talk about here. Kris Letang ranked the number 6 defenseman by NHL Network. Horwat, before we get into anything else, is that higher or lower than you expected?
Right on.
Somehow
right on. Without doing any research and looking into it too far, it's about right on, because the NHL Network is going to be a little stingy. They're not going to put Kris Letang in the top 5, but they also know you can't drop him out of the top 10, especially not with the season he just had. Could have, let's be honest, let's say NHL players going to the Olympics, he could have made that team probably.
Yeah.
Judging by how they're not 5 Canadian defensemen in front of him, he could have made that team. That being said, we knew he wasn't going to get placed in front of a guy like Roman Josi after the season he had, or Cale Makar after winning the Stanley Cup. It's a good spot for him. It's like perfectly right where I would have put him. Maybe 5, because Charlie McAvoy's not a top 5 defenseman. Don't at me.
Yeah, honestly, and that's where I was thinking too. I was like, I don't understand the hype around Charlie McAvoy. Maybe I don't watch him enough. I know he's one of the top 10 defensemen in the National Hockey League, but I feel like Kris Letang does a lot more than McAvoy does. But that, again, might be because I watch Letang more often than I watch Charlie McAvoy. But I agree, this is a really good spot for him. You mentioned that there's not 5 defensemen ahead of him that are Canadian. There's only one, and that's Cale Makar. So, yeah, he's the second best and second ranked Canadian defenseman in the NHL. That's pretty high honors from NHL Network. And if you look at the top 5, it is McAvoy at 5, Fox at 4, Josi at 3, Hedman at 2, and Makar at 1. You got a bunch of Norris Trophy winners ahead of Kris Letang and then Charlie McAvoy. So I don't think you can be quite upset with this top 20 list. Not that many people do get that upset with this top 20 list. At least we don't. But it's a good spot for Kris Letang. He's getting his flowers on a national scale. And maybe this leads into a season where he can actually fight to get into that top 3 of Norris Trophy voting once again. I know it's hard to crack it, especially with 4 guys like we mentioned in the top that are usually going to be immediately put in there and have to do something horrible to be taken out. I think Letang is primed, sort of like a college football team. He's in a good position to start the season, which makes it that much easier to get into that top 3.
He is. And he's got more coming for him. We know he has these extra 6 years that he has to prove to still be one of the best to ever do it, especially with the Penguins. He's building, and let's be honest here, a Hall of Fame career.
Yeah,
if he can remain as good as he's been for at least 2 more, I think he's got it locked up. The 4 years after, I mean, come on, we've seen Hall of Famers have more than 4 bad years.
Yeah,
and where I'm not even saying he's going to have 4 bad years, I'm saying this upcoming season, bare minimum, we know he's going to be good. The season after that, maybe we take a flyer and figure things out, and then we go from there. But to still be in the top 10, let alone the top 20 of a list like this, says a lot. He's getting his national recognition, and I don't think he moves up any higher going forward, just because.
No, it's probably the highest we're going to see him.
Yeah, because we know Cale Makar is only going to get better. Roman Josi is going to stick around. Adam Fox is only going to get better. I think Charlie McAvoy is there because he is a capable defenseman who stepped in for overrated Zdeno Chara. I think that's why he's there. Let's just be honest. Big market, original 6 franchise. He's from the area, is he not?
I'm not sure where he's from. I know he's U.S. born. I'll look that up real quick for you.
A local kid, if that's true. He stepped in for one of the most, maybe not overrated here. He stepped in to a role that was left by a Hall of Famer. And he's been doing it decent enough because he took that spot the same year. I think Chara, Krug didn't leave the same year, but Krug left the year prior. And I thought that I lost another defenseman that's not coming to me right now. It was all of a sudden Charlie McAvoy's defense, and somehow Boston's still a playoff team. Yeah. They're going to give him his flowers for that.
Yeah, so Charlie McAvoy it depends on what you want to say from the area. He was born in Long Beach, New York, but also went to school at Boston University, which is
That's right.
probably why you're thinking that. But yeah, no, Charlie McAvoy is beloved by the Boston Bruins faithful, and I think he's a really good, like, don't get me wrong, he is a top 10 NHL defenseman.
Yes.
But I do agree with you. It's funny you bring up Zdeno Chara when you mentioned, even if Letang has 4 bad seasons, he's put enough on tape there he could be considered. Zdeno Chara's last however many seasons were not good National Hockey League seasons, and he's still considered potentially a first ballot Hall of Fame player. So, yeah, go ahead and start talking. My camera just completely fell off. Yeah, no, that's my point.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be a top 10. Charlie McAvoy's definitely going to be a top 10 defenseman, regardless of whether I like it or not. But I think maybe if Letang was to make a jump over someone, it's going to be him. As for the rest of the list, we know everyone around the league is also getting better, plus more defensemen entering the league. You never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Rasmus Dahlin was in this top 20. If let's say the Buffalo Sabres not make the playoffs, but pop off for a good stretch and make a competition, make it decent, and it's because of him, you see him jump way up on that list. So, and I said this a while ago, defense is a changing position in the league. Everyone's starting to play like Bobby Orr, a little more than Nicholas Lindstrom, where it is not free for all, but there's much more of a offensive aspect put on these defenders these days.
Roman Josi scored 95 points last
year.
95 points. Like, if you would have told me that 7 years ago, I would have said, like, really, like, defenseman scored 95 points. Come on now. And
I would have thought it was Cale Makar.
Well, 7 years ago, I didn't know who Cale Makar was, but yeah.
7 years ago. I thought you said last year.
Yeah, no, 7 years ago. But like, if you look at this list, there's a lot of young guys that are going to move up. Moritz Seider is ranked 11th. He is going into his second year in the National Hockey League.
Yep.
Do we need to say anymore? Cale Makar is heading. I mean, he feels like he's been around for a long time. I think it's his 4th year. He's number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Fox, same position at number 4. I mean, Devon Taves is getting a lot of respect. He's at number 8. I mean, the Islanders look worse and worse for getting rid of him. Miro Heiskanen at 10. There's a lot of really young players. And then you have your John Carlsons, your Chris Letangs, who are still getting a lot of respect. But you look a couple years in the future, those guys are going to take that top 5 role, especially I think a guy like, Moritz Seider is going to be in the top 5 probably by next season.
Yeah.
So it's a position that is evolving. It is a position that you need to be able to score at an offensive clip if you want to get even in the sniffing distance of the Norris Trophy. So I think it's still something that Chris Letang could do coming off a career season where even though he only scored 10 goals, which is low for him, he had 58 assists for 68 points, career high. So you have to put a lot of respect on his name. That, and he plays 25 minutes a game plus. Sometimes he's up in the 30s, 31, 32 minutes, especially if it goes into extra time. So Chris Letang is still one of the premier defensemen in the league. NHL Network believes it. I believe it. You believe it. Most people with a brain still believe it, and you can chronicle that until the cows come home. But obviously the Pittsburgh Penguins believe it as well because they signed Letang to a 6-year contract, $6.1 million. I still think it's a bargain, especially early on in the deal. And as of right now, you're getting the 6th best defenseman for $6 million, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think, once again, you got to just commend Ron Hextall for the job that he did on that contract, at least in the early stages.
At least in the early stages. And you know what? That's all we can ask for. 59 games away from 1,000. Well, with 6 years left on the deal, I think he's going to do it.
Well, yeah, eventually. But it'd be nice to see him get it this season because we know Malkin's going to get it this season. And it's always, let them both have their moment in the sun. And that way Malkin's going to be early in the year, about a month in. The Tangs will be late in the year. So let's spread out the celebrations, give us some things to talk about in every month. That's what I like to see.
Yeah, I think Malkin's, I just looked at it. I think he's like 19 away.
Yeah, he will get it. As of right now, he will get it on the road against the Chicago Blackhawks, I believe. And then the next game will be a home game against the Calgary Flames. I believe that's what it is. I'm almost 98% sure that that's what it is. And I believe it's also in November. Like November 19th might be the Blackhawks game. November 22nd might be the Flames game. If I'm saying that spot on, I'm impressed with myself, but nobody else gives a shit. So the other Penguins to be named in the top 20 from the NHL Network, there are 4 others. Crosby and Malkin, of course, both named to the top 20 centers list. Jake Gensel named to the top 20 wingers list. There's one list remaining. And that is, I don't know if they do head coaches, but we'll have to wait and see. But they do have to do goaltenders for sure. So we'll see where Tristan Jarry lands. I think it's a guarantee that he's in the top 20.
I would hope so.
Yeah, if he's not, then there's something wrong. We just got to scrap all of these discussions because it loses all of its weight if they don't have Tristan Jarry as a top 20 goaltender.
Yeah, I think they do goalies and then kind of mush every position together and actually go with the top 20 in the league.
Players. Yeah.
So that could be the fun one.
That could be in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Is what I'm assuming, but we'll have to wait and see. But we're going to take one last quick break. When we return, we're going to close things out with our weekly Pens poll. Welcome back to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I will try for those on YouTube to not fling my camera across the room this time. I apologize for that. But we have a Pens poll this week. It goes along with what we talked about on Thursday's episode. If you want our in-depth analysis on our answers of this, go back to Thursday's episode, download it wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe on Inside the Penguins YouTube channel, all that fun jazz. But let's get into it, Horwat. Weekly Pens poll, the question of the month, basically. Are you excited about the potential return of the RoboPen logo? Did you see the results of this poll, Horwat?
No, I did not see. I think they were big. I think I scrolled past them randomly once.
Yes. It's fairly one-sided. What do you think won?
I'm going to say that, yes, everyone's excited.
Yes.
That seems to be the Twitter
consensus.
Yeah, consensus.
Yeah, and you would be 100% correct because 67% of our voters said, yes, we're excited for the RoboPen. And 33%, which is honestly bigger than I expected. I expected 75-25, to be completely honest. But 33% said, no, I don't want to see that ugly-ass pitching back on Penguins jerseys. So obviously, do you still say yes? And then we'll talk about the little other wrinkle that was thrown in later last week.
I'm going to say yes, and then I want to hear the wrinkle because I'm sure I have a rebuttal already.
Well, as I'm going to look it up because this is a visual medium as well. But yes, the wrinkle that we're talking about was a leak from, I believe, Adidas.
Oh, right.
And you know what it is now. So you can go into talking about it while I continue to look up the image.
Yeah. I think no matter what people say about it, I'm excited for it just because A, it's something new. Mm-hmm. B, this whole it's cursed thing. Listen, we're not wearing it in the playoffs. A. B, we're not going to wear it that often. If it's anything like the last one, we're wearing it, 8 times? I forget what even the first reverse retro thing was. And then we're not going to wear it again. Mm-hmm. All the fans can own it. All the fans can wear it because that's really what all this is for. It is to drive fan interaction and to help rebuild some of the finances that were lost during the pandemic for these hockey teams. And here's the yellow top on it. And also it looks like it is more than just a yellow shoulder thing, which would have been interesting had it just been like a yellow shoulder and then going from there. But looks like it's going to be another yellowish jersey. I'm still interested to see what it can be.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm not happy that it's yellow.
No.
To be completely honest. But I'm intrigued because I don't think they could just make a purely yellow jersey with that logo. I don't know if that would look appealing, and I don't know if they're honestly, this will come off wrong. I don't know if they're stupid enough to do that. But something that Doug in our group chat, which honestly it has been one of the most fun things over this offseason, he said gradient. And I said, what if it's a vertical gradient where the yellow is on top and then it fades down into a little bit of gray where the logo is and then black? Similar to what we saw, as you mentioned last week, from the Vancouver Canucks last season. Was it last season?
Yeah, 2 seasons ago.
Okay, so maybe that's what it is. I mean, this, when you see it right under the Adidas, you see a piece of stitching. If you're not watching on YouTube, there's a piece of stitching that usually indicates the beginning of the actual jersey and the end of the shoulders, and that's also yellow. So I don't know what they're going to do here. Obviously, the collar is black. The Adidas logo is black on it. But I'm confused to see what they end up doing with it. Obviously, we can only get so much from a small image of the upper back of the jersey, but it is looking like yellow will be a primary color, and it looks like the RoboPen will also be included in some way, shape, or form.
Now I'm sitting here trying to dissect it, because if you think of the Penguins jerseys that were involved with this triangle RoboPen logo, we would already see some sort of stripage in the leaked image here. That we would already see something. So it's going to be something intriguing.
Yeah, it's going to be something different. I think that's the biggest thing we can take away from it. It's not going to be anything we've seen before, I feel like. I mean, there's going to be, obviously, like the RoboPen logo will be on that, but it's going to be, I feel like it's going to be leaving the norm of the Pittsburgh Penguins' normal jerseys.
It fully might be, especially considering even like some of the, I'm trying to really think back of the last time we had a jersey that didn't have anything kind of on the shoulder pads or would have changed at that point. I mean, the ones we have now, but there's no nameplate visible here either.
No.
So, but like that's right where the nameplate would sit. So
yeah, I don't think that you can read too much into that.
No, but I'm saying like that's kind of where like the design would start changing colors. I'm trying.
Yeah.
The only enough.
Yeah. I was going to go ahead. I'll let you go.
Yeah, because the only other jersey that I'm thinking of that didn't have a shoulder change color was like the Sidney Crosby rookie year jersey with those triangle sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be intriguing. I don't know when this is supposed to drop, when the full jerseys are supposed to drop. I know last time they did reverse retro, they dropped all 31 at one time, which was crazy. It was a lot to digest. We had the jersey god Tom Franklin come on to the show, but I'm intrigued to see what this ends up being, especially because it came out as yellow on Thursday when we were talking about it for a lot longer than we need to continue to talk about it. I said, it's all going to be on execution. How do they execute this? And this was an early indicator that they're behind the 8 ball on it. So we'll see what ends up happening with it.
Yeah, at this, I really try not to predict or get angry about things that we don't have tangibly in front of us.
Yeah, but we discussed it because it's August.
Of course. So from there, I'm just gonna kind of leave it. Just be like, all right, just show me the final product. Overall, again, I don't care about what people say is wrong with the logo. I don't care, because guess what? Don't buy it. How about that? You don't have to buy it. We're not going to wear it in the playoffs. We're not going to wear it that often. We're going to wear it for a season, and then everyone can own it themselves. Go from there. I'm excited for it to come back because it's something new for the time. Yeah. And again, it's always fun having these discussions. Like we said, it's August. We're going to have a discussion like this. But again, at the moment, I'm just not going to read into it. I'm going to say I'm not liking the yellow we see, but I'm excited to see what we get just because it is something new. And that's it. I'm not going to try and get worked up over it.
Well, like you said, it is an August conversation, but it is our last August conversation, because by the time we come to you next time on Thursday, it'll be September. It'll be the month of training camp. We are just about 3 weeks away from all the Pittsburgh Penguins coming back onto the ice at the UPMC Lemieux 66 complex. We're excited to see that. I'm excited to hopefully be up there for the first weekend, get you guys all the in-depth, whatever you want to see, who's practicing with who's skating with who, even though it's the first 3 days, and they usually don't mean that very much. But we'll be back on Thursday with a new episode. We're going to be talking a lot about training camp and who can impress and who has the opportunity to make the biggest jump at the 2022 Pittsburgh Penguins training camp. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Have a great week, Pens fans.